Republican State Representative Jeff Leach of Allen, thank you so much and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
Thanks, Jack. It's great to be with you.
So nice to be with you. So before we start about the session, I got to ask you about some of the headlines that we've seen in the last week. And that is this New York Times report that President Trump wants Governor Abbott to call a special session for redistricting of congressional districts. Have you heard anything about this?
Well, I have, and read the story you read, have seen all the news that's been going around, and have been in communication with our counterparts in Washington and with the governor's office and the speaker's office and the lieutenant governor. And look, we're going to do what's right for Texas. We're going to do what's lawful. We, of course, drew maps, congressional, House, Senate maps in 2021 after the census. I was on the redistricting committee at that time. And so, look, we're gonna see what happens over the next few weeks. And if the governor calls us back into special session, whether it's on redistricting or any other matter, then we'll show back up to Austin and we'll do our jobs.
Are you expecting that? And is this something you support?
Look, when it comes to special sessions, Jack, I've been doing this long enough to not expect or anticipate anything or to predict what might happen. I trust the governor's going to do the right thing. I will say we need to be careful and cautious when it comes to every issue, but certainly issues like this dealing with 31 million voters and making sure that their voices are adequately and fully and lawfully protected and at every level. And so when it comes to redistricting, we take that task very seriously, and we'll work, like I said, again with our counterparts in Washington and here at the state level, and take also direction from the courts when it comes to what we might be able to do and when we might be able to do it.
But those conversations have taken place.
Those conversations are ongoing. What's going to happen, I'm not sure, but I know that every option is on the table, and we'll see what happens going forward.
How many of you have seen an ICE agent before in Dallas?
Also want to ask you about these protests that we've seen against ICE, against the mass deportations from President Trump. Governor Abbott has said he's going to send in the Texas National Guard to the big cities where these big protests are planned. What's your thought about this?
What we're seeing in mainly blue states, what we're seeing in California and other states like it, cities, that is lawlessness. It's unacceptable, and we here in Texas at least are in full support of our law enforcement, and we'll give them all the tools and the resources they need to crack down on lawlessness. When you're breaking into stores, when you're looting, when you're ransacking, when you're harming property and people, there is no justification for that. No matter what the issue you care about is. When it comes to immigration, when it comes to border security, when it comes to deportations, and when it comes to what we do with this very complicated problem in this country is not what we're seeing in countries where there's rioting and looting and unlawful protesting. Of course, everybody has a right under the First Amendment to assemble, to peaceably speak out. In Texas, we're going to protect that right. Would I fully, Jack, support our governor when it comes to cracking down on lawlessness and using any and all tools and resources at our disposal to do so?
So let's talk about the session a little bit. One of the last items of the session was this back and forth that we saw play out on X between you and the lieutenant governor over judicial pay raises and whether lawmakers' pensions should be tied to that. How did that all play out?
Well, the lieutenant governor and I are aligned on many issues, including this one. What we pay our judges, making sure that we've got a well-compensated, equipped, experienced, capable judiciary here in the state of Texas is an emergency item. It's a crisis item for the state. All of the laws that we just passed during the legislative session, I should say most of them, will end up in a court in front of a judge, being tried in front of either a judge or a jury, and we have to make sure our judges are well compensated. The lieutenant governor and I agree on that. We are 49th out of 50 states when it comes to how much we pay the base district pay salary for a district judge. That is a major problem. And so at the end of the day, Lieutenant Governor and I and the House and the Senate under Speaker Burrows and the Lieutenant Governor were able to come together on what I think is a really, really good plan going forward to change that, to invest in our judiciary. And I'm grateful for my relationship with the Lieutenant Governor and our ability to come together at the end of the day and get it done.
But there was real discussion, debate, and difference over whether this should be tied to lawmakers' pensions. You didn't want that, right?
That's right.
Initially. So Why not? And how did this come to pass where you came to a compromise?
Well, at every point in session, but specifically at late in session, when we're dealing with conference committees and differences between the House and the Senate, no one gets everything that they want. Compromise in some cases is a bad word, but in cases like this, compromise is not a bad word. We had strong opinions, the House and the Senate, on how we should do this. We were able to get 5 conferees from the House and 5 conferees from the Senate together around a table to talk through those differences, and I'm really proud of how we were able to do so collaboratively and constructively. I don't believe that going forward legislative pensions should be tied to judicial pay. I was glad that we finally ended that. Would I have liked it to be ended sooner? Sure, I would have. But that the other chamber felt strongly the other way, and so we did what we could to make sure long term that the state is in a position where we can pay our judges more, invest in our judiciary without increasing our own legislative compensation or retirement.
And the Texas Ethics Commission, after 2030, will be in charge of this?
Right, so going forward, it's my expectation that never again, as long as I have a say, as long as I sit in the legislature, never again will we be voting on our own legislative pensions, on our own compensation. We will be giving that, not only giving that, but requiring the Texas Ethics Commission every 5 years to adjust that, taking various factors into account. And what this will do, Jack, is it will allow us next session or in subsequent sessions after that to give our judges needed pay raises down the road without taking into account how this might affect our own pocketbooks and paychecks and our own retirement, which I think is the right policy for the state.
Another bill that you authored that passed was House Bill 6 on public education. Why do you think it's a game changer when it comes to student discipline?
So House Bill 6, the Teachers' Bill of Rights, is maybe the bill that I'm most proud of this session. We accomplished a lot of really great things that I was proud to have a hand in, but it was very important to the Speaker and to the House, frankly to the Governor as well, that we crack down on student discipline in our schools. Teachers have told us 2 things. They tell us a lot, but the 2 things that we heard loud and clear coming into this session was, number 1, we want to be paid more, and teachers deserve to be paid more. But number 2, teachers also want control of their classrooms again. They want to be able to invest in those 25 kids in their classrooms, to focus on them, to spend time on them, to educate them, without 1 or 2 kids taking their attention away and distracting them by these severe discipline disruptions. Classroom clearers is what they call them. And so what we did is we restored teachers' rights and to control their classroom. Yes, to protect our kids' rights to be in the classroom, but when it comes to student discipline, to make sure our teachers have the tools and the resources they need at all levels to crack down on it. And I'm really proud of what we did. It's I think, historic and landmark, and I'm very grateful for all of the people, including the educators and the parents who had a hand in helping us craft that bill.
And what was the reaction by teachers and school districts with regards to the public education, the public funding bill, House Bill 2, $8.5 billion in new money, but at the same time, the state is more focused on where that's spending. They're telling the districts, instead of giving a high amount of money in the basic allotment and leaving it up to school districts, now there are a lot of different specific funds that the districts themselves have to follow state law.
Yeah, so I'm really proud of the work that we did on House Bill 2, having been on the Public Education Committee myself and working collaboratively with the Speaker and our Chairman of Public Education, Brad Buckley. I mean, we worked tirelessly around the clock, Republicans and Democrats from all across this state. We rolled up our sleeves and said, what is best for our students, for the 5.5 million Texas school children in our classrooms, and what is best for their teachers and their families. And so whether it's student discipline, whether it's the Parent Bill of Rights that we passed, or investing $8.5 billion into our classrooms. And not only is it a landmark historic investment, the largest single investment we've ever made in our public schools, put the amount aside, but the way, to your point, the way that we're financing, the way that we're funding our schools and our classrooms, the way that money gets to the classrooms where it does the most good, we've totally reformed. And so I think that's a good thing. We don't have to always do things the way they've always been done. And when it comes to school finance, we prove not only that we can invest the right amount, but we can do it in new and innovative ways. And I'm really proud of how we were able to accomplish that this session.
What are your school districts saying?
So the school districts during the session, I represent 10 school districts, suburban and rural school districts, whether it's Allen or McKinney or Blue Ridge or Farmersville, Princeton, Anna. They all have strong opinions and different opinions about what is best for them and their unique school districts. And for the most part, they're resoundingly supportive of House Bill 2, what we did on House Bill 2 and House Bill 6, the Teachers' Bill of Rights, and a number of other education bills that we passed. I think our school districts know, at least I'm hopeful that they know, that although maybe not everything went their way, they know that the legislature has their back. At least for me, they know that Jeff Leach and the House under Speaker Burrows has the back of our public educators and families that find themselves in public schools, that choose public schools. And I think that's a good thing as we leave Austin and go back home.
A couple other bills that you really had a heavy hand in, and that was non-disclosure for sex assault, sex harassment cases. Right. That passed.
Right.
And so why do you think, some people may be surprised it took this long. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, so Treys Law, I was really grateful to work with a number of really brave and courageous survivors and victims who themselves have used their stories for immense good, and they've courageously spoken out, and they've been in the halls of the Capitol working with us to make sure that Texas, when it comes to Texas, that we are supporting victims and survivors, supporting their families, and that we're cracking down on perpetrators. And we were able to pass Treys Law, named after Trey Carlock, a Dallas gentleman who was abused at Kanakuk camps, had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, and unfortunately and very sadly took his own life a few years ago. His sister, Elizabeth Carlock Phillips, helped lead the charge to pass Treys Law in his honor, banning the use of non-disclosure agreements in the state of Texas. It's essentially hush money is what it does, and now that we've passed Treys Law, the NDAs, non-disclosure agreements in cases of sexual abuse and assault, not just for children, Jack, but all cases of sexual abuse and assault and human trafficking that is against the public policy of the state, and by virtue under the law, are they're void as a matter of law going forward. That's a really, really strong public policy win for victims and survivors, and we're already seeing it replicated across the country and other states just over the past few weeks since we've passed it here in Texas.
The Robert Morris case, though, really put this in the bullseye, right?
Sure. What happened to Cindy Clemshire and Robert Morris back in the 80s between the ages of 12 and 17, where she was sexually abused, and then he became one of the most famous and richest celebrity pastors. I don't really know if you can call him that, preachers anywhere in the world. And she sought justice, and he, through his attorneys, tried to get her to sign a non-disclosure agreement. It's just disgusting and awful. But thankfully, Cindy did not do so, and Robert Morris is now facing the consequences of his actions criminally. But Cindy also, along with Elizabeth and many others, helped us shine a light on this very big problem, and I'm glad that we were able to prevent non-disclosure agreements from ever being used in the state of Texas ever again in the future.
Another bill you pushed for that didn't make it across the finish line was abortion medication.
Right.
Why do you feel so strongly about that?
Well, we in Texas, I'm grateful that we've essentially ended elective abortions here in the state of Texas. Over the years, I've been really grateful and proud to have a hand in leading legislation that has cracked down on elective abortions, like I said, essentially ending them. I think this is the third year in a row where we've had 0 elective abortions reported in the state of Texas. However, out-of-state abortion pill manufacturers are still finding their way into our market. Our estimates, our data shows that anywhere from 25 to 35,000 chemical medical abortions are taking place every year. And what's happening here, Jack, is those out-of-state manufacturers and distributors are sending these illegal abortion pills into the state to cause elective abortions against Texas law, but also putting women at great risk. There's great health and safety risk to the woman who actually takes this series of pills. And so my bill would have ended that and held those distributors and manufacturers liable. We weren't quite able to get it over the finish line, but I'm confident that next session it'll be back in front of the legislature again, and hopefully we'll be able to get it done.
And what do you say to women who say, look, you have a near abortion ban, and we can't even do this? So what do you say to critics and say, it's outrageous?
I understand that this is an issue that's hotly debated and there's differences on both sides. In addition to this bill, we've always been about, at least for me, I've always been about, yes, protecting unborn life. I believe that that is our most sacred duty as elected officials, to protect innocent life, but also to protect Texas women and their families, to come alongside mothers, and not just to protect life, but to create a culture of life. And so what I would say to people who disagree is to look at the Senate bill that we passed. It's called the Life of the Mother Act. I think it was Senate Bill 31. I lose track of numbers.
Yep.
The Life of the Mother Act, supported by conservative Republicans and liberal Democrats, that said, look, we are not in this state going to put the life and the health of the mother at risk. And so I stand firmly behind that, stand firmly behind what we've done to invest in women's health, to protect women, and we're not going to retreat from that position here in the state of Texas.
2026 is just around the corner. Are you eyeing any position, perhaps Texas Attorney General's, or any other position that you're considering aside from running for re-election for your seat?
No, I'm running for re-election, and with the loving support of my wife, Becky, and our kids, and so many great supporters and friends here in our district. Our work is not yet done, and I'm really proud, Jack, of our Speaker Burrows, and the new tone that he set in the Texas House. I'm proud to have played a part in that, and we've got more work to do in the Texas House. And so I'm running for re-election and look forward to being back soon, but not too soon, back to the Texas Capitol to continue keeping Texas strong.
And you see Speaker Burrows as being Speaker next session?
Oh, I do, resoundingly so. He did a great job of making sure, it's not the Speaker's job to push a specific agenda. It is the Speaker's main job and duty to ensure that all 149 members are able to represent their districts, empowered to represent their districts and advocate for their values. And without question, Speaker Burrows did that. And even though some members might disagree strongly with what resulted from the session, you'd be hard-pressed to find a member who could say that the Speaker wasn't open and able and willing and eager to help them represent their districts, which is exactly what the Speaker is elected to do.
Staying on 2026, as you know, the Attorney General is challenging Senator Cornyn in that primary. Are you going to be making any endorsements in that race?
Not yet, but what I will say is I think the people of Texas deserve for them to be on the same stage in a debate, at the very least. I think that the people of Texas deserve to know what the differences are at all levels between me and my opponent, between whoever might run for Lieutenant Governor or Comptroller, and the United States Senate, which is going to be at the top of the ticket, whether it's Senator Cornyn, Attorney General Paxton, or someone else that might enter the race. The people of Texas deserve not for them to be hidden in the shadows and largely unavailable to the voters, but on a stage, out doing town hall meetings, meeting with constituents, answering the tough questions. And I hope the people of Texas will take stock of who's willing and eager to do that and who's not.
You've been very critical of the Attorney General before.
Well, we've had our differences in the past. I will say that the Attorney General has done really good work when it comes to defending our constitutional rights, of course, pushing back on the Biden administration, now working hand in hand with the Trump administration. So personal differences aside and past differences aside, I'm interested in making sure that the people of Texas have their rights protected and have someone in the Attorney General's office, someone in the Governor's office, the Comptroller's office, my office, and the United States Senate who is representing them and who is accountable to the voters. And that's what the people of Texas expect, demand, and that's what they deserve. And so put our differences aside in the past. I'm looking forward, and when it comes to the 2026 elections, Texans will make their voices heard, no doubt, from the top of the ticket down to the bottom.
Who do you like for Attorney General?
That's left to be seen. I think right now we've got a couple individuals who are running. I think there's probably more to be that are going to jump in the race. That's still a long way away. We're just now catching our breath from the end of session, and elections will be here soon enough. And whether it's that race or others, I think that the landscape in all of these races is probably going to look a lot different than it does right now here in the next couple months.
Just a couple more questions. There's a lot of pressure on Governor Abbott to veto Senate Bill 3, the ban on THC products.
Yeah.
Where are you on that?
So Senate Bill 3, it's a complicated issue, and I know the governor, as he always does, will take his time in looking at that issue and making sure the right public policy considerations are taken into account. I will say that right here in Allen, Texas, my police chief, Steve Dye, who I think is one of the best, most respected police chiefs in all of Texas, has really led the charge when it comes to cracking down on these illegal illicit vape shops. Many of the sting operations where vape shops have been closed for selling to minors, for selling illegal products, have taken place within just a couple miles of where we're sitting right now. So the decision for me was always clear. I'm going to stand with my law enforcement, and I voted in favor of Senate Bill 3. But I do understand that there are some alternative and contradicting views. And like I said, I think the governor will, as he always does, take all of those into account, and he'll end up doing the right thing.
My last question to you is just about some of the Republicans who've criticized the state budget. They've said the state is spending way too much money in this latest budget. It's big government, and it is not enough property tax relief. What do you say to that?
We are spending $51 billion in now this is the people's money, giving it back to them in the form of property tax relief. I'm proud of what we've done, and we did a lot of really good this session when it comes to cracking down on property taxes and making sure Texans are able to keep as much as they possibly can. Could we have done more? I think we can always do more when it comes to protecting the people of Texas' money and their paychecks, their pocketbooks, and being faithful stewards of taxpayer dollars. I'm always in the business of cutting taxes. We passed a very bold, fiscally conservative budget that invests in the priorities of the state, not only now, but going forward. And property tax relief was a key part of that. But like I said, when it comes to a tax cut and property tax relief, there will never be a tax cut that I see that I don't like. And so we'll continue to crack down on that going forward. And sure, we can always do more, but I'm grateful and proud of what we did this session.
But what do you make of the Republicans who've criticized that?
Some of the Republicans who've criticized that, I won't name names now, but they're always criticizing what's done, whether it's in Austin or in Washington. They're always they cannot be a part of something constructive. They truly just complain all the time. And I think people of Texas see through that. I think the people of Texas are tired of that. Republican primary voters can look at what we did this session, starting with the budget, school choice, and continuing to invest in border security, protecting parents' rights. I could go up and down the list of conservative victories that the people of Texas achieved this session. And if we spend all of our time just complaining about what we didn't get done, I think that's a disservice to the people of Texas and to our Republican primary voters and to those voices. And it's not many, it's just a handful of loud voices who I think frankly are more interested in promoting themselves than telling the truth. I'm not really paying attention to them, and frankly I don't think the voters are either.
Republican State Representative Jeff Leach of Allen, thank you so much.
Jack, thank you.
We appreciate it.
Appreciate it, thanks.
Yeah.